Hey, welcome to another episode of Fred Speaks. I pray this podcast finds you in the best of health and spirits. And I would like to talk to you about a subject that we're all very familiar with, and it is fear. And we're living in a time where there's so many different things that are going on and happening in life. And uh, I was thinking about uh, an event that most people are familiar with was 9/11. And I can remember when 9/11 occurred that I was working and they had the TV on at the job, and I can remember seeing plane hit one of the buildings, and for some reason fear. And I was thinking at that moment, I was thinking like, oh my God, the world is coming to an end. Because never in my entire life had I seen anything like that. And I'm like, wow, this is surreal. This is not normal. So the world has definitely got to be coming to an end for something like this to happen, and to happen in the United States. You see things, you hear things about stuff happening in other places, but that actually happen in what they say your neck of the woods, and where you live in your country, was very surreal. And I remember going to my car, and I went and sat in the car, and I'm like, oh my God, what is going on? What is going on? And at that moment, I can remember just a calmness, you know, coming over me, like, and it was almost like a quiet voice saying, what are you afraid of? What are you afraid of? Yes, it's something you've never seen before. It's something you've never experienced before. But what are you afraid of? And, at that moment, I realized the thing I was afraid of was death, dying. I was afraid of dying. And when you think about death, death is the only thing that you you can see other people that pass away, they die. You could even be there in the room and everything, but you don't really know death until you yourself have to experience it. And I think we equate death with pain, suffering. It's not going to be a peaceful situation. And that will torment you. That fear of dying will torment you unless you face it and just like, okay, so what if I do have pain? What if I do have to suffer? But if it's my time to go, that I have completed the work or completed my time on earth, it's just like if you're in high school and you get all the way to the 12th grade and you have the fear of going out into the real world. What am I going to do now? And you're afraid that all the things that you have learned and all of that, now it's time that I got to really like apply this. I got to move on to bigger and better things now. It's going to prove out whether I was paying attention, whether I got what I needed, and that I'm ready to move on for the next chapter in my life. And if you lock up at that moment and like, I don't want to go to college. I don't want to have to now get a job, or I don't want to have to leave behind what I had gotten comfortable with, what I was familiar with. And now I got to move on to something that I have no idea what it's going to be like. And I know death doesn't equate to graduating from school, high school, or college, or whatever it is. Death doesn't equate to that. However, they are similar in ways of moving to the next chapter, or graduating, or uh, completing whatever it is that you were trying to complete. And when your life is done here, what else is there for you to do? And you hear people talk about, well, their life, it was, ended too soon. But if your work was done, what else was there to do? And in the eyes of other human beings, it's like, they were just beginning, or they had so much to do. But if God, was ready for you to come home, or ready for you to move on, then, you know, that supersedes what any other, human being feels. Um, so then we have to be able to face our fears. And death is just one fear, but I would like to bring it back to day-to-day things that we find ourselves having fear. And sometimes we have fear. Uh, you can be in school and there's somebody who is a bully, somebody who just wants to bother you every day. And fear will have you where you don't want to go to school, you don't want to have to face and deal with that. And the main thing that a bully doesn't like is from somebody to stand. And the worst case scenario that can happen is, you still get beat up. But at least the bully knows that you're not going to just sit back and let him beat you down, but you're going to fight back. You're going to fight back. And at some point, you're going to be able to defeat your bully, because the bully is going to get tired of you fighting back. He's going to get tired of you throwing blows, and that you're landing blows. And eventually because you conquered your fear, you'll overtake your bully. Because you realize that the blows that he is throwing, yeah, they hurt. But now you don't have that fear anymore. And it's like, okay, I can defeat him. And I was thinking about, and I want to, talk on that, because a fear, there's ways of dealing with a bully. One of the things, and fear will have you to the point where you're like, if I go tell somebody, it's going to get worse. But that's the thing. That's one avenue that you have to take before you take matters into your own hand. Is that I'm going to tell somebody, starting with my parents, starting with the people at school, and I'm going to let them know what is going on. And I'm not telling them this because I'm scared, but I'm telling them this because I want them to know that if this does not stop, then I have to defend myself. I have to defend myself. I got to face this person. Otherwise, it's going to get to the point where I can't be what I need to be because of fear, and because I know that when I come to school or whatever, that I got to deal with this person. And so I got to face this. And it's almost like having an obstacle in life, is that it's there, and your fear of, sometimes I remember I was on a plane, and there was this lady on the plane, and it was her first time flying. And she was so afraid. She was so afraid. And I remember her talking to me, and she was asking me as we were getting ready to take off, and she could hear sounds as we're moving on on the runway. She could hear sounds, before we even took off, but just taxiing out to the runway. And she could hear sounds, and she was like, "What is that? Is that normal?" And I'm like, "Yes, that's normal." And so when we got ready to take off and we started to build up speed, she again, it's just normal, it's everything. And I'm like, "Yeah, it's normal." And then we get up in the air, and we start to experience some, light bumps or whatever. Nothing really turbulent, but just some light bumps or whatever. And she's like, "Is that normal?" I said, "Yes, that's normal." And the plane making a turn and everything. And she's like, "Is that normal?" I'm like, "Yes, that's normal." I said, "You're fine. It's going to be okay." And at that point, she had faced her fear. Number one, she got on the plane. So the door is closed. She's on the plane. She's facing it. She could have been back in the at the gate and just said, I can't do it. I can't do it." But she got on the plane, and that's the thing, is we gotta make a move. We can't let fear cause us to be where we can't move, that we're at a standstill. Sometimes you have to be still, but then there's times where you got to move. Now it's time to move. And but so she made the step to get on. Yes, during the course of the flight, during the course of the process of taking off and all of that, and then being in the air and stuff, and feeling things, hearing things, because it was unknown to her, she asked questions. And so that's what I'm saying, is that when you know you got a fear, a mountain, or something that you got to deal with, you know, move, embrace it. And hey, I know I've had an issue with public speaking, and I did not like getting up in front of people. I would let somebody else take that any day, anytime. I would prefer to sit back and listen. And then I got into situations, positions, and everything where I had to speak. I had to speak. I had to speak. And I knew that I had to rely on a higher power. I had to rely on something other than myself, um, because if I focused on me, the fear would be too much. It would be too much. So I had to get to a place where I was out of me. So out of body experience. And it was amazing, because I'm like, wow, I said all of that. I didn't run off the stage, or I didn't run from in front of people. I actually stood there. And maybe the words weren't as elegant, as powerful as people would have wanted. But man, I was facing my fear. I was facing my fear. I was facing the thing that would cause me to, like, in my gut, to have a feeling in my gut. I was able to face that. And I remember one time, church, a pastor, he said he wanted me to work with our youth. And I'm thinking to myself, man, what am I don't know about, you know, working with the youth or any of that. I don't know anything about that. And but I said yes. I said yes. In spite of my fears and everything, I said yes. And I was good. We were doing car washes and different events and stuff. And then one day he said, "You know what? You got to get up and you gotta bring the message. You got to speak." And I'm like, "Oh God!" I was like, "Man, I was great, doing good with doing little events with the young people and little activities. But this is a whole nother animal here to get up and actually now I got to speak." And the first time I got up, and my pastor was, he was in the pulpit and he was sitting there, and I'm up and I'm like, every time I would try to say something, I'm crying. I am crying. Grown man crying. And I could not get words out. Every time I would try to say something, my voice would get high pitched, or I was just rambling, and it wasn't good. But I could hear my pastor in the background saying, "It'll get better." He said, "It will get better." And I'm like, how in the world is this going to get better? I'm crying in front of these people. I'm up here boo-hooing in front of these people, shaking in fear. And even in the crying and boo-hooing and all that, I did it though. I did it. It wasn't in my eyes, and probably the people in front of me, it's like, oh my God, is this dude gonna do anything other than cry? But I faced it, and sure enough, what my pastor said, that it would get better, it did get better. But that fear was still there. It was still there. And I've learned that a lot of times fear is not going to go away. But you got to just take fear and say, "Fear, I know you're there, but hey, I got to do what I got to do. I got to do what I got to do. I might get laughed at today. Uh, you know, they may say, man, he really bombed. But I'm not going to let you cause me to be stagnant, cause me to be in a place where I can't at least grow and start growing." And that's what fear will do. It'll have you where you can't grow, you can't move forward, because whatever it is, until you face it and deal with it, it's just going to have you in a place. It'll have you in a place where you can't move forward. And you don't want to be in a place where you can't, your growth is stunted. And for my fear of speaking, I had to ask God to give me the strength, that because I believe I have something to share with people, and things I've experienced, in life, and just things that God have given me. I believe I have something to share, but it's fear wants to prohibit me from being able to share with others. And that's why I say fear will have you where you can't be all that you can be, that you can't be what you're destined to be. And maybe you have to, whatever it is that, you know, you're trying to do and that fear comes about, maybe you need to, educate yourself more on whatever it is, to get to the point where you are so confident in what you are doing or what you're speaking about, that, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter about fear. You know what you have. And sometimes you have to even uh, put in time, even when there's times where you're not really, it's not really a speaking engagement, or it's not something to display your craft or whatever. Um, that if you have moments where you can do those things, but without it being in front of a large group of people, then you should take advantage of those times that you can get up and you can speak or whatever, and in that you start to build that confidence that I can do this. I can do this. Not that fear is going away, because fear is going to be there. And you know where fear resides at? It resides in the human part. But then you have to have what I call an out of body experience, where you basically leave this behind, and you just like, you get out there and you're like, wow, did I say all of that? And I know I've had moments where I've been speaking and I can't remember anything like immediately after that. I can't remember anything, but then shortly after, bits and pieces start to come back to me, and I'm like, wow, all of that came out of me. And so it shows you that once you can get past your fear, man, it just opens up so much. You're free now, and you can like move forward without restriction. And the crying thing, I was thinking about that, how the first time I got up to speak and I was crying and everything. And so I was, every time I would get up to speak, that would start to happen. I'd find myself getting choked up. And so I asked somebody, and that's the thing, you can't be afraid to ask questions. Like if there's something you're dealing with, to ask somebody, like, how do you deal with this? Have you ever experienced this? And so I asked someone that was a seasoned speaker. I said, I have moments when I start talking about something that's really personal to me and mean a lot to me, that I get choked up and I can't really get it out because, um, I'm so choked up I can't even speak. And they told me something so simple, and I'm like, wow, man, okay. And so the person was like, when you feel yourself getting choked up, just pause. Take a deep breath, just pause. And get your emotions in check, and then start to speak again. And I started doing that, and I could hear it in my voice that I wanted to get choked up. But I would take that, and man, it was like, okay, I'm starting to conquer uh, my emotions, starting to conquer my emotions. And when I started to conquer that, I'm like, wow, I can tell the thing that I wanted to share. I can get it out, and I can speak it with power, and man, and now I'm able to share moments and experiences and times with people without getting so choked up that I can't get it out. So let us face our fears. Fear is mostly in our imagination. Fear will always have you thinking the worst. The worst is going to happen. But what about the good that can happen? What about you nail it? You get up and you're like, man, you whatever it is that you're doing, you were able to do it, and do it to the best of your ability. And people are helped by it, blessed by it. What about that? But fear will always show you the negative or the worst that's going to happen. Just like the man with the snake. Fear will show you that you're going to get bit. You're going to get bit. You're going to die. But man, the flip side is you're able to defeat your fear. You're able to face it and defeat it. And now you can move forward. Nothing is impeding your pathway. And that's all fear. Fear is that snake that's there in your pathway. Sometimes you can't run back or run to the side. You got to move forward. So what are you going to do? You're going to stand there and let the snake strike you, or are you going to defeat? You're going to defeat fear and say, "Fear, I'm not running. I have nowhere to run to. Everything behind me, to the side of me, is only going to bring pain to me. So I got to move forward. My joy, my peace, my happiness, everything that I need is in front of me. So I got to go through you. I got to go through you. And I'm not going to stay here and in fear, crying and hoping that it'll pass, closing my eyes and like, oh my God, I hope when I open my eyes that it's gone. It's not going anywhere. And we have to face our fears. We have to face them and defeat them step by step. I'm moving forward. I know you're there. I know you're there. You're there every time I try to do this. Every time I want to do this and I know I can, you're there. And so fear, I'm coming through. I'm coming through. I'm not going to run from you anymore. And I haven't been running. I've only been fooling myself thinking I'm running away, that I'm getting away, but I'm not getting away from you. You're still there. So I'm moving forward. I am equipped. I have confidence that I can defeat you. And all you're trying to do is prohibit me from sharing and being the person that I'm meant to be. So I face you, fear, today. I face you, and I am going to defeat you. There may be something else up the road that fear may come up, but this particular thing, I am going to face it. I'm going to defeat it, and I'm going to be free. I'm going to be better and be what God has destined me to be. So with that, I would like for you to comment, ask your questions, and we'd like to encourage you to join us for another episode of Fred Speaks. Thank you.